You see, we only know one side of the narrative. It's easy for people to say that Hamas is a terrorist organization, yet they were democratically elected. I might not like that. In fact, I don't agree with Hamas a lot of the time. But I cannot say they're just terrorists. How come one person's terrorist and another person's freedom fighter?
Andrew Murry?
Well, it's...
Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Hope you are feeling good. Today we are going to be checking out a debate which Douglas Murray was one of the speakers, titled, "Is Israel justified in bombing Gaza?" Wow, I believe this is going to be an interesting one. Let's start with the video. Go.
Great to see you. Hello, I'm Nicky Campbell. Welcome to The Big Questions. Well, over this past week, we've seen pictures of the terrible devastation visited on Gaza by Israel's bombers. And the tanks rolled in last night. But Israel believes it is encircled by enemies. And there's no doubt many of those enemies would like to wipe Israel off the map. Is Israel justified in bombing Gaza? That's our first big question. Later, we'll be asking, is it right to experiment on animals? Here in Oxford, that's a very big question indeed, as a new biomedical research lab takes delivery of its first consignment of monkeys. And do you know what your partner's up to, all those hours spent on the computer? Well, we'll be asking, can you commit adultery online? We're in Oxford at Wychwood Girls' School with a local audience, and up in the gods we have the Mail on Sunday columnist Peter Hitchens, Rabbi Yitzhak Shochet from Mill Hill Synagogue, television presenter and reality TV star Esther Ranson, and the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams. Well, this week 463 people have been killed by Israel's bombing of Gaza, more than 100 of those civilians, including at least 75 children. The bombs were in retaliation for the hundreds of rocket attacks launched by Hamas into Israeli towns and villages over the preceding weeks, which killed 4 Israelis. In fact, Hamas, their constitution says Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. So we ask, is Israel justified in bombing Gaza? Rabbi Shochet, you're just back from Israel, aren't you?
Indeed, yes.
How can this be justified? How is it anything but hugely disproportionate? I mean, upwards of 75 children killed. How does that weigh on your conscience?
Let me say my heart certainly goes out to the Palestinian people. I think it's a tragedy of the highest order, and I think I would call upon all Palestinian people to stand up once and for all against the catastrophe of a Hamas terrorist so-called government that is using them as human shields. At the end of the day, and the bottom line is that whereas Israel looks to practice as much restraint as possible, where Israel certainly looks to avoid civilian casualty as much as possible, the flip side is that Hamas looks to deliberately target as many civilians as possible. We've practiced restraint now for the better part of 3-4 years. 6,000 rockets having landed upon Israel. It begs the question, are we just supposed to sit back and take it on the chin?
How many Israelis have been killed in those 6 years?
It's not about a numbers game. It's not a question of how many, because if they had it their way, if every one of those missiles had gone off and they had killed 2-3 million Israelis in the process, that's precisely what they'd be looking to achieve.
Well, Middle East
Maybe it was
historian...
good fortune that those rockets didn't go off, and we're not looking to target any sort of civilians in response.
Middle East historian Taj Hage, I mean, Barack Obama said this. He said, if someone was sending rockets into my house, where my 2 daughters sleep at night, I'm going to do everything in my power to stop that, and I would expect Israelis to do the same thing.
I mean, that's quite true, but the point is we need to understand how the situation has come about. We seem obsessed with the current situation. We need to understand how Israel came into being. You know, we can debate here from now until doomsday about what's happening today, but we need to understand what has created the situation. How many of us know about the Hussein McMahon correspondence? How many of us know about the Sykes-Picot Agreement? How many of us know about the Balfour Declaration? All of them are duplicitous agreements that brought about the state of Israel.
But we are where we are.
Yeah, and to call Hamas a terrorist organization. What is the Stalag, the Irgun and the Haganah? How many of us know this? You see, we only know one side of the narrative. It's easy for people to say that Hamas is a terrorist organization, yet they were democratically elected. I might not like them. In fact, I don't agree with Hamas a lot of the time. But I cannot say they're just terrorists. How come one person's terrorist and another person's freedom fighter?
Andrew Murray?
Well, it's not the case that they're freedom fighters. The first thing that Hamas did when they were allegedly elected was to kill their co-religionists in the Gaza, was to throw people off buildings, to shoot people in the back when they're running away. This is what the Hamas do to their own co-religionists in the Gaza, to other Palestinians. So the first thing is that Hamas not only inflict terror on the people of Israel, they also inflict it on other Palestinians. It's for the Palestinian peoples, as the rabbi said, to try to overthrow this terrorist organization. An organization which fights, if I may just finish.
As terrorists.
Well, an organisation which fulfills every...
Come off it.
Well, I don't know what else you call an organisation which has killed hundreds of it.
What was the Irgun? What was the Haganah?
Well, the Irgun and the Haganah are not operating at the moment.
No, but what were they?
Well, they were terrorist organisations at the time. But I would say that we're talking about what's happening at the present. And the present situation is that Israel builds bunkers in which its civilians have to shelter from rocket fire from the Hamas. The Hamas builds bunkers and hides its rockets in it, and then puts civilians on top of those bunkers. That is a terrorist organisation.
That is an organisation that has no respect. David and Goliath struggle.
That is an organisation that has no respect for human lives, not Palestinian lives and not Israeli lives.
F-16s?
Mahmoud, you know people in the Gaza, and also you're from the West Bank. Can you... And it's all about putting on a completely different pair of spectacles to try and understand the other side's position, because that's the only way we're ever going to get anywhere. Can you understand the Israeli position?
I don't understand the Israeli position because they are causing so much carnage and bloodshed at the moment that is completely disproportionate for what they are claiming to achieve.
Okay, Rabbi Shoket, could you... And Peter, I'll bring you in a second. Could you, as calmly as you can, explain to Mahmoud again your position?
I would only ask you, because I've heard this bantered about for so long, what constitutes a proportionate response? In other words, if they spend the last 3 years throwing 6,000 rockets into Israel, would you consider a proportionate response for Israel dropping 6,000 missiles back into Gaza, and however many may be killed in the process, then so be it? I wonder what the UN would have to say to that.
Well, Rabbi Shochat is actually vocaling so many myths and so many misinformation about what's really happening on the ground. You know, Hamas was agreed to a ceasefire for the last 6 months before the outbreak of the recent violence, and no rockets were fired at Israel. Israel has recently engineered a situation in which it forced Hamas to shoot rockets at Israel.
And you're talking to me about myths?
And Israel have done in the last 6 months. In the last 6 months, can I continue?
Well, these guys are just disturbed by something you just said, and it behoves me to actually ask why.
First of all, rockets continued to come during the ceasefire from groups, not just Hamas, but Islamic Jihad. Second of all, Hamas ended the ceasefire, and before Israel went into Gaza last week, they fired hundreds of missiles back into Israel. You know, the Israeli people have suffered for the last 5 to 8 years with thousands of missiles being fired onto their towns.
In the last
500
years,
rockets from Hamas over the last week as well.
Only 16 Israelis were killed in
only 16.
18. It's, of course, it is a sad when one person is killed. But we have here proportions. 16 Israelis are killed in the 8 years. We have 4,000 people, Palestinians, are killed on the Gaza Strip by the Israeli missiles and by Israeli assassination squads.
I just wonder. I mean, Robert, you are from the Conservative Friends of Israel. I'm putting this to you, Peter Hitchens. I mean, this is a difficult time for Friends of Israel, capital F and small f, isn't it?
It's a very difficult time. Partly, because of the very second-rate nature of the political leadership in Israel at the moment. The problem with this action, apart from the very large numbers of innocent people who are getting killed in it, is that it isn't actually likely to achieve the aim set out for it. If I thought that Israel actually had a serious plan for stopping the rocket attacks on Sderot and other Israeli towns, then I'd find a lot more sympathy in my heart for the action. What this is about, I'm afraid, is sordid electoral politics in Israel, and the desire of various politicians to get themselves spurious reputations as hardliners. 6 months from now, there will still be rockets being fired from Gaza into Israel, despite this operation. Once this is all over, it will continue to happen. If it were a serious operation to stop this, if such a thing could be contemplated, there'd be more to be said for it. But it's disproportionate, not because of the level of arms involved, but because it simply doesn't have anything to do with its alleged aim.
Well, OK,
that's the real problem Israel has.
Douglas, I think I called you Andrew earlier, and I apologise for that. You know, you have the stature of a tennis player, clearly. But how can this do anything but strengthen the Hamas position, not only in the region, but across the whole Arab world? They've all of a sudden, look at the march yesterday with thousands of people there, with Hamas, you know, that was 12,000 people, Hamas posters, you know, people like Alexei Sayle and Annie Lennox marching alongside people with Hamas posters, and all of a sudden they're sort of heroic freedom fighters.
Really?
They've been strengthened.
You think Hamas or Annie Lennox become heroic freedom fighters, or Alexei Sayle needs to tell you what's right and wrong in the world?
Your problem is this, if I may interject just a moment, your problem is this, that the very, very foolish and unbalanced ideas, a gentleman over there enunciated one of them just now, that Israel in this conflict is Goliath and the Arabs are David, when Israel in fact has about, 2% of the land mass of the Middle East and about the same population. This idea that Israel is the aggressive bully is created in the public mind. This war is not going to be won by rockets, it's not going to be won by tanks, it's being won or lost on the television screens of the world. If Israel loses the support of the peoples of Europe and North America, which is in grave danger of doing, then Israel will lose the war.
Douglas Murray.
When Israel risks, like in 2006, having 1 million of its civilians having to live under threat of rocket fire, this is something which should be beyond its concern about what European governments think or don't think. You mentioned earlier about the huge number of civilian casualties. I can't think of another situation in war in which a fifth of casualties are civilian, and in which the Hamas have suffered up till now perhaps as many as 400 casualties. 400 terrorists being killed seems to me to be good work. It's good work for the future of Israel. It's good work for the future of the region.
Upwards of 75 children have been killed. You can't call them terrorists.
No, I didn't call them terrorists. I said they were innocent civilians. But that 4 times that number of people being killed, the targeted people being killed, are terrorists, and they have been killed. And that can only be good for the region. It can only be good for Israeli security. And if the Arab world really cares about the Palestinian peoples, why doesn't it do something for them practical? Instead of whining about this tiny slither of land which Israel occupies, why don't they realise that if there's going to be peace in the region, it relies on there being a Palestinian solution and it relies on there being an Israeli solution? That can happen, but the first thing that has to happen is that the Arab governments and the Palestinians realise that Israel isn't going anywhere. If they made that realisation, why would they be firing rockets into Israel proper? This isn't disputed territory. They're firing rockets into Israel. Why are they doing that?
I know
we have to look at the root causes of this recent conflict. It didn't start on the 27th of December when the rockets started flying and the eruption of this recent conflict. We have 6 months of siege and blockade over Gaza. People are starving in Gaza. Starvation by Israel, blockading supplies of food, medical aids, and everything to Gaza. There is a 41 years of occupation. Palestinians are not allowed to have their freedom. Israel withdrew from the Gaza, from the settlements, but it continues its occupation of the Gaza Strip by
Esther, let me bring Esther in. I mean, I just wonder, you know, as a Jewish woman, obviously you have this emotional attachment to Israel, I'm sure. How do you feel at the moment about all this?
If I were God, I would ban religion. God's given us how many thousand years of trying to make the world work religiously, Rabbi? And we have failed. You are a Semite. I am a Semite. Why can't we live together? We are, in the Middle East, neighbours. Actually, my emotional loyalty is to the country I was born in, which is Britain. So what I feel about this is, if I were God right now, I would say, Hamas, God's not on your side. Jews, you're not chosen people. I chose humanity, and you have failed me. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to melt the ice caps. I'm going to cause the waters to rise, and I'm going to see whether that brings you together.
Is that why it's happening?
And oh yes, overpopulation, all this stuff going on.
Is this about religion?
This is not about religion. This is about a free, democratic nation fighting Islamist terrorist regime.
Hold on, Islamists?
Yes.
All right, and and Israel is a Jewish state, is it not?
And it's a democratic Jewish state.
Yes, and there are all kinds of other differences, but the most important thing they have in common is they're all human beings and they need each other. Israel has so much to offer beside bombs. It has expertise, it has skills. If it exported its doctors, its irrigation experts, its scientists...
Israel has to defend itself when it
How
is
do
being
you
attacked
defend
like
yourself?
any nation.
You defend yourself politically. Politically.
Zoe, do you not as a liberal take some pleasure from the fact that
Look, I take
an
no-
Islamist, a hardline, conservative Islamist organisation, we've heard what they're like, Hamas, we know what they're like, we know what their policies are, we know their attitudes to gays, we know their attitudes to women. Do you not take some pleasure in the fact that their command and control structure is being destroyed?
No, look, I can't take anybody who could take any pleasure from any of this is completely sick in the head. I mean, the point is, what I'm hearing here is a lot of people arguing tit for tat about who's in the wrong and who's in the right, and that's fine at an individual level. A lot of people are very angry. A lot of people do feel very vengeful, but at a state level, you have to look strategically, and this isn't going to work strategically. And you know, you do have a moral responsibility at a state level to behave in a reasonable, not vengeful, but strategic way.
Douglas Murray, very quickly. Douglas, then I'm going to go to the audience. Douglas.
I just asked what anyone in Britain would do if we had 6,000 missiles raining down on us and we had a sixth of our population living in bunkers.
Okay.
We wouldn't tolerate it, and nor should Israel.
What, would you tolerate that if we had these rockets raining down on us in this country? What would we expect our government to do?
Well, the rockets have been raining down on occupied Gaza, and they've been raining down on the West Bank. That's where the rockets have been raining down. It's an occupied country. Your man says that they're fighting an Islamic terrorist regime. I was in Nablus in 2002, and I saw the flattened police headquarters where they'd tried to fight the Israeli invasion with guns, and they'd brought in F-16 bombers that killed hundreds of Fatah, not Islamic terrorists, Fatah soldiers, and not soldiers even.
And they're, of course, the enemies of Hamas at the moment, and the internal struggle.
Now, the Israelis, it's all about the occupation and keeping the occupation of those lands. And when a few rockets, and I say a few rockets, come out, and
well,
during
thousands, actually, thousands of rockets we're talking about.
During the 6 months ceasefire, none other than when the Israelis went in and killed 22 Palestinians were killed in Gaza during the occupation.
Okay.
230 died from lack of medical equipment.
What's your view? Very quickly.
Hamas seems to be rather cynical in that they're placing their rockets in the hospital courtyards in the middle of populated civilian areas. And so when Israel is bombing them, of course they're going to cause civilian casualties because they're targeting the rockets launch.
How can Hamas go on about complain about civilians being targeted when they have been targeting civilians for so long, and also when they are clearly holed up in civilian areas? That rocket hit a school in Beersheba in Israel the other day.
We have to take in mind that Hamas is a democratically elected party, and they are the government in Palestine. And targeting, Hamas is basically targeting the whole Palestinian people. What Israel has been doing recently is destroying the infrastructure of the Palestinian people, and not Hamas. The targets that Israel have bombed in recent days in Gaza, the majority of these targets are ministries of education, ministries of health, the clinics, the hospitals, their mosques, and including United Nations schools.
But of course, Peter Hitchens, you are so right. It's how it looks to the rest of the world, isn't it?
Well, it is, and this, as I say, this is the point where Israel is losing. And Mr. Murray, I think it is, was talking about the how would a British government respond. Well, Britain was under terrorist attack for many years by the Irish Republican Army, to whom we've now surrendered, as it happens, in the most shameful grovelling I've ever seen.
Okay,
but while that was going on, we did not actually send our Air Force to bomb Dublin. And I don't think that it would have been considered a particularly sensible response. Effective response is one thing. Ineffective, politically blundering, flailing doesn't work.
During the Troubles, of course, perhaps a better analogy would have been flattening or bombing the Catholic parts of Derry. We never did that, did we?
No, but we sent in troops. We had areas where we had famous mistakes by the British Army during the Northern Ireland Troubles. This is, however, not at all similar.
However,
this is not at all similar to the situation in Northern Ireland, and the president just doesn't work. The IRA were not an elected organisation, as Hamas claim to be at the moment.
Well, they had massive support.
They didn't fire rockets into mainland Britain with the continuity that the Hamas did. The Hamas have effectively ministries in the Gaza. They have arms dumps in the Gaza. If we had been able to identify similar arms dumps in the IRA's times, if the IRA had the munitions that the Hamas do now, we would have done everything and anything similar to what Israel has done.
They killed more people. They killed one second, please. But they killed more people with massive atrocities on the British mainland than Hamas have managed with rockets over 10 years.
Hamas have killed hundreds of people through suicide bombings and sending in suicide bombs. This is why the security fence has been needed.
The IRA killed thousands of people.
If I just may add, there is also just a fundamental misunderstanding about making the IRA comparison, which is the IRA never had as its charter obligations the annihilation of the British state. That is what Hamas is in its charter dedicated to, the annihilation of Israel, not the negotiation, not an issue over particular borders, but the annihilation of Israel. That's why it's sending rockets into mainland.
Zoe Williams.
Surely that is why Israel's priority then should be separating the Palestinian people from Hamas and not uniting them all under this indiscriminate bombing.
Mahmoud Abbas is not uniting with
we've got an aid worker here. You were in Gaza quite recently, weren't you?
I was there last January.
I just wonder what the opinion was then about Hamas in Gaza and what it would be now.
To be honest, the work we do at Islamic Relief, the people we work with, they're less concerned now and then about the politics and the political posturing that goes on, and which leaves always inevitably, which we see it everywhere in Darfur. We work in Darfur, Afghanistan, everywhere. You know, all this political posturing. There's people who suffer are the civilians, the poor people who have no say, who have no way of kind of making any representation to anybody about what they would like or what they want. They're the ones who are suffering. They're the ones who are victims to all of this. And this inhumane kind of posturing from all sides is something which is quite sad to see. And I was just on the phone to one of our colleagues. Just last night, and he said, "Look, I'm really glad that Israelis can hide in bunkers. Sadly for the Gazans, there are no such bunkers to hide in." He said, "I'm in the cellar of our house, and we can hear them outside now." He says, "We're all terrified, and we don't know if we're going to see the morning sun rise." So it's really quite a terrible situation for the Palestinians. The humanitarian situation was dire before this. Before this, before this recent campaign, many of the most respected NGOs were coming out saying, "Look, this is not tenable. You cannot continue as you are." 75% of people in Gaza continue to rely on handouts, food handouts. You know, this is not a situation which
as
continues.
Gordon Brown said, they must... Well, we'll get you in here. Gordon Brown said on the Andrew Marr programme a little bit earlier on, Israel must have security.
Well, on that subject, I think we can spend a lot of time talking about who's justified and who's not, but I don't think it's that type of situation. It's a long-term problem, and this is a short-term solution, because violence only escalates violence. And I think...
We've had this debate, but not once have we called it what it is. We talk about Islamism, we talk about Hamas, but we don't talk about Zionism. I mean, what is Zionism? Do we people know Zionism is a political ideology? It's not the same as Judaism. We need to separate the two. We also need to understand that to be anti-Israeli is not to be anti-Semitic. The two are totally, vastly different. They're not linked whatsoever. We also need to see the parallel between what happened in the Warsaw Ghetto and what's happening in Gaza today. I mean, that is the parallel we need to see. We need to understand.
Okay, one last one on that. I saw people with placards at one of the demonstrations the other day saying, "Stop the Holocaust." How do you feel when you see posters like that, and when you hear, last word here on this, but when you hear comparisons like that?
Utterly despicable. There is a bottom line here, and that is plain and simple. If Gaza stopped firing rockets, Israel would pull out of Gaza.
So
that's what it comes down to. That is the bottom line.
What is the difference? What is the difference?
You're missing the point. If
Gaza,
Hamas stops firing its rockets into Israel, Israel would not be there in the first instance. Israel would leave there.
So how does Israel get hold of 82% of the land?
To cease and
Israel get hold of 82% of the land?
Propaganda
when the 1947 resolution gave it 67% of the land.
And desist its terrorist atrocities.
Okay, everyone. I'm going to have one sentence.
Be allowed to get away with this. It is quite wrong to equate the deliberate extermination of European Jewry by Nazi Germany with anything that Israel has done. You know it's wrong. It's
Actually,
false
the parallel.
propaganda,
Actually,
and you
the
should
parallel.
be ashamed of it.
Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. That's all we've got time for.
Wow. What an interesting debate. You can tell it was really, really, really heated. Just by the title, is Israel justified in bombing Gaza? So what do you think? Is Israel justified in bombing Gaza? And I believe that's the reason why they engage in this debate. So based on the point and the fact that they have given in this debate, I, for one, I believe if it's possible for there to be a two-state solution where this conflict between Israel and Gaza can be resolved amicably without shedding blood, without without losing life, without losing property. But I believe in reality it's very difficult. It's very difficult because if Israel is going to stop defending themselves, the Palestinian people, Hamas is going to use that opportunity to wipe out Israel just by their quote from the river to the sea. So they are ready to wipe out the people of Israel. If Israel are going to ceasefire, I believe Hamas is going to take that as an opportunity to wipe out the people of Israel. And I also believe if Hamas also is going to ceasefire, probably maybe Israel might also decide to attack Hamas, because Israel is also trying to wipe Hamas out because they are the terrorists. Because Hamas, which is the governance of Palestine, governance that was voted into power after Israel gave up the governance in Gaza, and ever since then, Hamas have been organizing organizing terrorists for them to bomb Israel, for them to release missiles into Israel. So I believe Israel in question is trying to eliminate Hamas. Though a lot of civilians have lost their life, I really feel for them, like seriously, because losing your loved ones is something very painful, and I really feel the pain because losing your loved ones is not something easy. No one wishes to lose his parents. No one wishes to lose his friends or brothers because it's something very painful. But we also have to understand that these things happen in war, and in war people die. So that's what is happening. Just by the point one of the speaker gave, that they have built bunker. So when Hamas release a missile, the people of Israel, they can go hide under the bunker. At the end of the day, a lot of them will be protected. And he also mentioned a point that Hamas, Douglas Murry mentioned a point that Hamas also have built a bunker, but the bunker they built, they are using it to store their missile and putting civilians on top of the bunker. So you can tell that Israel is trying to protect its citizen, and Hamas is not doing the same thing. If Israel is building bunker in order to protect their citizen, so when Hamas release missile into Israel, their citizen can get a place to hide in order to protect themselves. But Hamas is not doing the same thing, which means Hamas is not protecting the life of the citizen. Hamas is not protecting the life of the citizen. We all understand that the people of Israel were the original owner of Gaza, but in order for them to sign a peace treaty, sign a peace agreement, sign a ceasefire agreement, they gave up the governance of Gaza. And when they gave up the governance of Gaza, according to statistics, about 10,000 Israeli were residing in Gaza at that moment. And this 10,000 Israeli, they own houses in Gaza, they own properties in Gaza. They were forced out of Gaza by Israel IDF soldier in order to be able to maintain peace with the people of Gaza. And after Israel gave up the governance of Gaza in 2005, Hamas was politically, democratically voted into power. And ever since Hamas came into power, life has become more miserable for the people of Gaza, for the people of Palestine, because apart from attacking Israel, they also they also attack the people of Palestine, the people of Gaza, and there are a lot of incidents whereby they end up throwing people from a tall-story building, throwing people from a tall-story building, and the people end up losing their life. So Hamas is not only causing harm to the people of Israel, it's also causing harm to the people of Gaza, it's also causing harm to the people of Palestine. So I believe what Israel is trying to do is to protect themselves. You can't tell me that you will stand watching someone releasing missile into your home and you stand doing nothing. So, because I believe Israel is trying to defend themselves. Because if they don't eliminate Hamas just as they are doing, they are going to encounter a situation whereby more missile is going to be released into Israel. And I believe right now what everyone is looking at is the fact that a lot of people are losing their life in Hamas. A lot of civilians are losing their life in Hamas, and few people are losing their life in Israel. So because of that, they feel Israel is playing victim, because Hamas are the one. A lot of people from Gaza, a lot of people from Palestine are losing their life. Why those in Israel, only few numbers of people have lost their life? So they feel they will argue based on the fact that more people died in Gaza, more people died in Palestine as compared to Israel. I think I don't want to argue with them about that fact, but they also have to understand the point that Israel are using their money to build bunkers. So when Hamas released a missile into Israel, from record, according to what I heard in this debate, that from 3 years, more than 6,000 missiles have been released into Israel by Hamas. But the number of people that lost their life is nothing compared to the number of people that lost their life in Palestine, in Gaza, because Israel is always doing everything possible to protect their citizens, to protect the civilians. That's why they are using their money to build bunkers. They are using their money to build bunkers. So when missile is released into Israel, the civilians can get some place to shield themselves, some place to hide. So they are not they can prevent the casualty. I believe if Hamas is also going to do the same thing, because I feel Hamas is not protecting a citizen. If Hamas is actually protecting a citizen, they are also going to build bunkers. So when a missile is released into Palestine, into Gaza, the citizen can get some place to shield themselves. But there's nothing like that. And they mentioned the point that Israel is the reason why there is food shortage in Gaza. Israel is the reason why the supplies in Gaza are no longer coming in. That right now there's no electricity in Gaza. There's a lot of social amenities like schools, like hospitals have been missiles have been released into these places, and the people don't get ways to go into these places because Israel has already released missiles into these places. And I believe Hamas, as the government governing Gaza, governing Palestine, they owe it to their citizens, they owe it to their people to provide the basic social amenities like hospitals, to provide food, to provide water to the people, not blaming Israel as the reason why there's food shortage, in Gaza, in Palestine. I believe since they are saying Hamas is not a terrorist group, that the world is trying to label Hamas as a terrorist group, that Hamas was democratically voted politically into power by the people of Palestine. So if that is what they think, I also believe that Hamas owe it to the people of Palestine, owe it to its citizens to be able to provide food, to be able to provide water, to be able to provide this little basic amenities, basic social amenities, so life can be more comfortable for the people of Gaza. And I believe right now, no one wants to live in Gaza, because living in Gaza right now, you have to live every day in fear, because you don't know the next minute whereby a missile is going to be released. So I really feel for the people of Palestine, for the people of Gaza, but the genesis of this problem is Hamas. Hamas is a problem. Instead of them building bunkers to protect the civilians, they are using the civilians as shields. And at the end of the day, they get to blame Israel, that Israel have killed a lot of civilians. And there's a particular video I watched, I think, by Douglas Murray. There's another video I watched by Charlie Cake. And the points they gave in those videos, they said, before Israel released a missile into Gaza, into Palestine, that they informed the civilians that this minute, this hour, this day, a missile is going to be released to this location. Civilians, kindly evacuate this area. So I don't know how true this is. I just got information from Charlie Cake, from Douglas Murray, that before the people of Israel release a missile into Gaza, into Palestine, they always inform the civilians to evacuate that area. So I don't know how true this is. So, but I really feel pain within me for those that have lost their loved ones in Israel, and for those that have lost their loved ones in Gaza. I really feel there's a way this conflict can be settled, whereby the people of the government of Israel and the government of Gaza are going to come together to find a two-state solution, whereby the United Nations can also come in order to help facilitate this resolution, because a lot of people are losing their lives. And I really feel there's a way Hamas can be eliminated. If not eliminated, if there's a way this issue can be settled, I really hope so. So I would like to hear your comments. What do you think about the point and the fact that the speakers have stated in this debate? Keep the conversation rolling. Don't forget, click on the subscribe button, click on the like button. Do have a nice day.
Yeah.